Welcome to the Elite Producer Podcast. Here, you'll find unfiltered, unapologetic perspective and training for the final expense life insurance industry. Coming to you from the great state of Texas, your host and president of Equita Final Expense Services, Chase Urick.
Hi there, Chase Urick coming to you again with another episode of Elite Producer Podcast. This is episode number 5. Extremely excited because we've got one of our own with us today. This handsome gentleman to my right or left, however Zoom shows it, is none other than John Peterson. John, thanks for joining me today, buddy.
Good morning, Chase. Glad to be on.
I'm excited about having you on. This is a selfish one, and I know Holden Hassel would agree. This is a selfish one for me just because I have the opportunity and the pleasure to work with you and to have seen you jump in and get rolling and just watch you continue to improve. It's been something to marvel at. One thing we like to do in this podcast is our listeners know we like to talk about perspective or provide perspective for those that are out there. Maybe they can pick something up that will help them get better. So, man, you've come out gangbusters. You're not a 30-year veteran to this. You haven't been doing it a long time, but you are absolutely crushing it, and you're getting better as the days go by. Do you mind sharing with everybody a little bit about your history prior to getting into the business?
Sure. Yeah. I've got some previous business experience. I've run a marketing business, which, since sold off to somebody else, and, focused on this final expense area. I see the opportunity and, the camaraderie and, the simplicity of this business compared to others. And it's really been really nice. I've been able to focus on just going out and making sales and improving my craft, talking with my builder, talking with Holden, talking with you guys, and, monitoring chat and all that, and just, getting iteratively better every day. So my background is just a business background, don't have any insurance background, don't have a finance background or anything like that. And, it's been fun.
How did you find two questions? How did you find final expense? And then how did you find EFIS?
Interesting. Yeah. When I got my insurance license, I got brought in and I was looking for some other marketing opportunities. And as you guys know, people get creative sometimes with their employment profiles out there when they're looking for candidates. And I got brought into another insurance company who was doing like a big herd thing. And so I came in, it was a big conference room. There were, I guess maybe medium-sized conference room. There were about 20 of us in there. I didn't have my insurance license yet, but they gave me the spiel and they talked about various cancer policies and heart policies and stuff that they could sell. And I was like, wow, this sounds pretty cool. I really, I'm at a point where at the time I was at a point where I just wanted to kind of surrender things to God's option and what he puts in front of me. And it felt like he was opening a door for me. And, I felt like the door was closing for me in that other regard. And so I just kind of surrendered myself and said, yeah, I've never done this before, but it's an open door and I'm going to walk through it. And so that's kind of how things started. And, my wife and I got to talking. They didn't have a lead program. And she quickly pointed out, she's like, where are you going to find the leads? And then they were basically wanting me to work my network. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a very good option. But I could see the opportunity in insurance was there. I spoke to a guy at church. It's kind of a long story. Sorry, Chase.
No, you're good.
But I spoke to a guy at church and he was like, hey, I know a dude that runs an insurance agency. You should go work with him. And this was right before COVID started. And then this guy had leads. And then, he had, the captive market. We were going to be working basically inside school districts. And they would call us out and we would just come in and almost like HR come in and like, here's your benefits, here are your options. That sounded really cool. Then COVID hit, all the schools shut down. And basically right before I was about to start up with him, everything shut down.
Wow.
Now, what was interesting there was his contract was terrible. And so it might have been one of those opening salvo kind of things, but it was basically like all your contacts are my contacts, there's no owning your book of business or anything like that. Thankfully, anytime I see a contract like that, I sent it off to a group over at Legal Shield, which I love. And so their lawyers reviewed it and they're like, you should probably take a look at these parts. And I was like, oh, so we looked at that. I was in the process of negotiating it with them. COVID hit, his whole business turned upside down.
Oh,
then I got a call from some final expense people. And once again, just waiting for the doors to open, and so I had some other final expense people call me up. I had a builder eventually from Ephes call me up, and the previous final expense group that I was with, no training. It was basically like, just go out there and do it. They did have leads, which was nice. They were telemarketing leads, which I do not prefer. I strongly do not prefer telemarketing leads. And so once I got on board with Ephes, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Like, we've got the leads, we've got the training. I can call my builder at any time, like literally any time. And it's just been, I've been able to, hit it with, just run with it. It's been, I love all the training. Like, I'll say that a million times. I love all the infrastructure, the band chat. I'm a community guy. And so whatever community I'm in, whether it's marketing or now insurance, I love to be a part of a community. So I love, soaking in all the stuff you guys have put out there, all the just knowledge that goes out on band every day. And then, Chase, your morning calls are awesome. They start us off on the right note every day. And so it's just a very good fit for me.
Now, I appreciate the love there. And I want to get to the community in just a second, because I do believe it's one of the most common items that we talk about on here, whether it's with somebody who's with Ephes, or like this past episode, we talked to a gentleman who's not with us, Dave DeFord. And community is something that gets talked about a lot. But I want to go back to a point that you just had mentioned in your story, which for me could be terrifying if I'm somebody that can't relate. But there are people who can relate. Six months into last year is when you started with Ephes. June is when you wrote your first piece of business. But prior to that, you had mentioned you had jumped into an opportunity, and then COVID hits. What a crazy time. I've been at this 14 years now. What a crazy time that was. And I'm empathetic to it. I'm because we were in the thick of it as well. What a crazy time last year was, and still a little bit today. But that uncertainty of March and April, May of what is the landscape going to look like for all insurance, all financial services industry? What was the advice you were given during that before making the jump and working with us?
Yeah, great question. And your video for me has stopped, but if my video is working for you, that's fine with me. But so I started making telemarketing calls probably, I think it was March of 2020. So right when everything was kicking off with COVID, and I had telemarketing leads, and my plan was to sell from home. And I had zero script, zero experience. I didn't understand level. I didn't understand any of these things, but I just started calling people and making it up as I go along and evolving and all of that.
So we got disconnected there. It's okay. Zoom. I'm not going to blame Zoom, but it's probably a user error on my part. But we got disconnected a little bit there. The question I was asking, John, was you had jumped into the industry at a very, very weird, unprecedented time, which was like right as COVID started to take off. So I wanted to find out from you, what was that like? What was the I guess the mentoring, the words of wisdom that you got in terms of how to handle that situation? Right.
So, I kind of came in very weird time, but also very opportune time, as we know now, reflecting back on everything. I got kind of brought into insurance just through an ad on ZipRecruiter. I had a previous marketing business and I was looking for some other options. And so I wanted to go full time with another marketing agency. And, I saw an ad out there that was kind of, it was interesting wording. And so it led me to believe that I would come in as a marketing position. When I got there, it was an insurance position. Yes, they were right. I would be a marketing manager. Yes, they were right. I would be a sales manager. What they weren't mentioning was I would also be an insurance agent, and I would be wearing all of the hats. Now, they didn't have a lead program. They didn't have as strong of a products as we do. It was basically cancer and heart attack, indemnity type policies, those things. And so I saw the opportunity though, and I'd been praying for opportunities for a long time. And, I felt like God had opened a door for me. And so I was willing to walk through it, really got in my head that I wanted to become an insurance agent, not necessarily with them, but I went out, got my license, spoke to a guy at church, told him, I said, I know a guy that runs an agency. And so this guy's agency was specializing in schools. This was right around February of 2020. Sounded awesome, captive market. They would call me out. I would come and sell them a policy. Now, March of 2020 hit, which is just when I was going to start with him. We were looking through some paperwork. The paperwork was not great. I had some legal folks review it over at Legal Shield, and they pointed out some things that I didn't see because I wasn't experienced in the industry, didn't know what to look for. You know, he basically wanted to be a captive agent. He owned the book of business. It was not great. To his credit, you know, he was giving me the leads. So I think that's fair in that case. But I could see me running out of opportunities. And then COVID hit, struck the business. Schools were all shutting down. You know, from there, you know, another final expense firm called me first. They had telemarketing leads and no infrastructure. So me being the new guy, no scripts, no nothing. You know, I just started making up my own scripts, calling people on the phone. A couple of months of calling people with telemarketing leads, zero sales. I was putting in plenty of work to get the sales done, but zero sales. I had a gentleman, and I'm being very open with you guys, Chase, and I love being open with y'all and everybody sharing with one another what's going on. But I had a gentleman threaten with me with a TCPA lawsuit, and that was a straw that broke the camel's back, which is why I don't like telemarketing leads. So once he did that, you know, I said, forget it. And there was already a builder from Ephes that had been reaching out to me, and I kind of pushed him off, and I said, let me do this telemarketing thing for a little while. Let me see if it bears fruit. At that point, I could see that it was not bearing fruit. Zero sales, you know, a threatened lawsuit, which, you know, I said, from that day on, no more telemarketing leads. I shut it down with that group, and then basically kind of made my way towards Ephes, got a contract with you guys. Love the community with Ephes. That's my favorite part of it. I love being a part of a community, you know, been able to soak in so much from you guys, you know, on the morning calls, on the, you know, these podcasts, you know, everything on YouTube. I've seen everything that you guys have put out there. You know, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, and one point that you made there that I love the story. That's what makes this, for me, selfishly, I love so much, is the story of everybody's journey is different. There are a lot of similarities in certain situations, but you know, you touched on something that I think can be a PSA for everybody out there as a licensed agent. You do really need to be careful. You need to take the proper precautionary steps to safeguard yourself. If you're working with a group that's doing telemarketing leads, or if you're independent and you're just on your own as a lone wolf, and you're being told that you need to do some or you're looking at doing telemarketing leads, there are some things that you really need to learn. Number one, get familiar with TCPA law. It's not like other law. It's actually pretty cut and dry, pretty similar. There is some gray area, but to understand it and to be able to put yourself in a position where you can protect yourself, it's actually quite easy to understand. A lot of times we've got overseas vendors, overseas vendors that are hitting you up through LinkedIn, social media. They're blowing up your inbox. And it's actually quite appealing when they talk to you about, hey, I can get you X amount of leads for this price, and it's actually cheaper. Back in the day, telemarketing leads were legit, and they were actually not bad. The problem is with TCPA law, what you're doing is you're putting yourself in harm's way. You're essentially going to be playing chicken on the highway, and you're not in a vehicle. You're just running back and forth, and eventually you're going to get hit. That's kind of a crude analogy, but it is what it is. We know from experience, little things, harmless things that you didn't mean anything malicious by can literally catch you. So if you're an agent out there, as John alluded to, you're talking about career litigators putting themselves in positions to respond to one of those calls and then turn around and, you know, essentially blackmail you or hold you hostage to pay them, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars, you know, to get yourself out of that situation. So it's really not worth it. Nowadays it's not. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Now to the good stuff, where you talk about where you're at today. What you're doing and what you're accomplishing nowadays is absolutely fantastic, because from a leadership position here internally at the company, there's nothing more that I love than seeing people come in, limited experience, and immediately take off and start helping people, and they're crushing their goals. They're making all kinds of money. I love seeing that. I love to see the maturation process.
Mm-hmm.
I love to see somebody come from green to experience. You've helped us with things internally from a technology perspective that we kind of joke about now, where it's like, we can't figure this out. And then John posts a picture, but from a sales perspective, you've really committed to your business, but we can talk about how we have all these amazing resources, and we're going to talk about community in a second.
Mm-hmm.
You have really taken every resource that we have available, and you've put it into your business, and you used it really to help yourself get better. Do you mind talking a little bit about the mindset behind making sure that you're diving into all of these things and not 1 foot in, 1 foot out, using all these resources to get better?
Absolutely. And, I was lucky in that I got started off on the right foot before I even started writing business with FS. There's a very open community here. People are willing to help each other out, even if they're not on the same, if they're not with the same, builder or anything. People just help each other out. Yep. Early on, as I was learning kind of more about this to see if it was for me, I was offered what's called a ride along. And so Matt Van Buren took me into his car. I was new, like completely new. And I was like, wow, this guy will let me come in the car with him and ride around all day, getting nothing, in return, from me. Well, I did buy him barbecue, but other than that, he got nothing in return. And so we went out all day, and he was sharing tips with me, and he was calling I was like, holy smokes, this guy makes calls like a madman on the phone. And since then he's put out a training thing. So definitely watch that on YouTube, but he's awesome on the phone. He's awesome in person. So just being with him and just kind of seeing how it goes. One thing I've noticed with Matt is he's just super even keeled on the phone. And that's really, a big strength there. And so one of the things Matt shared to me in the beginning was, I was telling him, like, I'm learning from here, I'm learning from there, I'm going all over YouTube, I'm learning online. He said, dude, just learn from the people at FS first and get that down. And then, if you want to do other stuff, fine, but prioritize that. And so I said, okay, well, I basically dropped all the other YouTube stuff that I was watching online and just started following. I think you guys were on a thing called Shoutcast before. It was like a podcasting thing. And so I went back and was watching, or not watching, but listening to all the episodes from like 2017. Yeah. And I went through all of those. And then I went through all the YouTubes. And then I went through all the podcasts. And I was just, anytime I had dead time, like in the car or in the evening when I'm just doing some chores around the house, I was just listening to those things and watching. And so the more I learn, the faster I learn, the better I can get, on a quicker time scale. And there have been some awesome agents that have just come out the door at FS and just crushed it, like unbelievable guys, like, Taylor Bride, John Haskins, all those guys. I was like, oh, these guys are amazing, right? I am not one of those guys. I came out like, I'm more of a jack of all trades kind of person. And so I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not necessarily exceptional at certain things. And I feel like those guys are exceptional right out the gate. But I'm very, very persistent, and I have a lot of perseverance. And so I put in tremendous amount of hours and hard work. Like, I don't normally watch TV during the week. Like Ben Bowman had said, he's like, if you're telling me all about your Netflix subscriptions, you're not putting enough time into this. Yes. And so I'm literally washing dishes and watching the YouTube podcast, and so I'm doing that during the week, and I'm doing that. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing other admin, preparing my leads, doing that stuff until I go to sleep. And then I wake up the next day and repeat. And so I think out of all those things, perseverance is my strength. It's why I've been able to get to where I'm at now.
I mean, at the end of the day, I use athletics a lot in the analogies here and comparisons. And in athletics, there's the guys who just have that God-given ability to make it look easy. And then there's guys who are grinders that have to put in that extra time, get those extra reps. That's kind of me. Holden, who you work with, naturally, I mean, he puts a lot of effort in, don't get me wrong. And particularly seeing him early in his career, he worked his butt off. But he's also one of those guys that naturally gets it. So I'm right there with you. I know exactly what you're talking about. You have plugged in as much as anybody that I've seen over recent history, and really just said, to make this work, I need to soak up as much as I can. But also at the same time, for those listening right now, you didn't allow paralysis by analysis. And that's another key point. You can have all of this information, you can have all of this data, all of these teachings, And you could have very easily, particularly when you got started during the pandemic, you could have said, I can't go out until I have this, or I can't go to work until I have that. You never did that. You jumped in, you plugged into the connective tissue of the community, and you just went. And I love it because people outside of our umbrella won't know this, but the morning call, every morning we want to hear the great, I had a $7,000 day. Well, we know that that's not always going to happen. And there were many a times where you would call out, I got beat up today. And we still do. But then it's John had a $4,000 day. John had a $2,600 day. And I think the big point that I want to make for you that I've noticed with other successful producers getting into the industry is you understand the sales side of it, that I may get beat up today, but you trust those numbers. I'm going to win today by my activity. My premium may not win, but I'm going to trust those numbers. I'm going to put the activity in. I'm going to get those presentations. You love the phrase, and I hear you talk about it all the time. Activity leads to aptivity. And you've really been an adopter of that, and you practice that on a regular basis.
And I think, on that note, and I'd like to kind of segue into builders as well. And so my builder, when I first got on, I was like, I don't have all my carriers yet. I just have one of them. And he's like, go out and sell them. And so I was like, all right. So I went out and I sold them. And, it's funny because I was in everybody's house looking through my builder cheat sheet and all that, or my health cheat sheet and all that. I'm like, well, it looks like you're coming up with American Amicable. And then the next house I'm in, I'm like, well, I recommend American Amicable for you as well, because that's the first provider that I had come back. And, I love that company now as well. So if it was fortunate that they were my first carrier, and, having the right builder is key. And so before I was here, my builder was helpful on the phone, but he didn't provide the infrastructure. So big shout out to Holden Hassel. Now he's always available. And, I called him on Saturday night at like 8:00 and he was available. He sent me a text back real quick, whatever, just kind of say where he was at, but he updated it, and Holden's always been there for me, especially in the beginning when I first got on his team. I would call him like 5 times a day and he would answer the call and, always help me out. I asked Holden a lot of strategy questions like, hey, what would you do in this case? What would you do in that case? And I'm able to pull in, I think he's got like 7 or 8 years of experience now. And so I'm able to pull in on those experience, like on tap. I don't have to Google it. I just Holden it, just call him on the phone.
Absolutely.
And then like he tells me, and that's invaluable. So having him as my builder is, such a blessing.
It's one of the unspoken, highly sought after resources that doesn't get talked about enough. I truly believe that our builder leadership team is second to none. Gentlemen like Holden, we're kind of spoiled on it because we get to hear them every morning, share their tips and tricks every single morning. But Holden, I've been in meetings before, and we're supposed to be deep in construction, deep in thought, and building things out for the next play and the future move. And I've seen him literally 2 weeks ago. We were in a meeting, and this is a big deal. We're putting some things together that are going to put us over the top and help add a big new revenue stream to the FS Producers bottom line. And he just literally about 18 times throughout about 3 hours, phone rings, he picks it up. And, most people would get agitated by that. I freaking love it. I love that. And we're going to try, as we segue to, community, the builders are a massive part of our community because the whole sense of our community here at FS, as I've mentioned on podcasts many times, best friend is typically an empty passenger seat for an agent in the business, regardless of what business you're in. Typically, your best friend is that empty passenger seat, windshield time going to and from appointments and people to see.
And one quick note before we transition on builders as well, something that doesn't get talked about enough is ethics. And so Holden's really been really good. He's very ethical, and I feel very confident that whatever experience and knowledge he's going to share with me is going to be in the best interest of the client. And that's something I really identify with. I mentioned early on that I let a lead go on Saturday, and I let that lead go, and I'm kind of revisiting that ethically in my head, but I was kind of in the right point. Not all insurance companies are created equal. And there's one company that I don't like as much as others because I don't feel like their customer service is on par. And so I let the lead go because the only company they came back with had not great customer service, and I didn't want to put them with that. Do I think that's the right call right now? I'm kind of revisiting that because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And then sometimes in life, like you may not be alive 6 months from now, And so I'm kind of revisiting that. So my new kind of philosophy on that is I'll use this company, if there's no other option and they want more coverage or whatever, but I won't use it to replace. Right. And so something's better than nothing. So ethics is really strong with me. Holden's very strong on an ethical standpoint. Sometimes it's hard to know where the line is, but I'm always glad that, Holden's on the right side of that line.
Yeah. And that goes to the community that we were getting to, because it's a great point. One of the things that we have involved in our community, going to what I was saying about the empty passenger seat, having somebody to call, having somebody to talk to when you're in a home, third-party validation, having somebody, to what you were just saying, that has an ethical backbone and will do what's right for that client every single time. Having somebody like Holden on that hotline, taking calls for people that don't even work with him. Number one, it's thankless. And I see him take a lot of those calls. And then also to have his group particularly call him directly, that's really, really cool. But it's a big, big deal to have an upline that practices what they preach. And since I've known Holden, he has done just that. But the community part of the hotline, the ability to call in, I know you utilize the hotline, you utilize Holden, the group chat. I want to talk about the sense of community, because for me, it's one of the biggest complaints that I hear about when we talk to a new producer coming from another organization. I won't name any names, but some of the big names out there, they're so big that people, their cup overflows. There's so many good people that get forgotten about. For you, that was a big, big deal. Talk about some of the resources that you utilize today with the group chat. I know you love that. That's an all boats rise mentality right there. You get to commiserate. I use 3 words: commiserate, celebrate, and educate with other like-minded people from all walks of life all across the United States. That's been a big deal for you.
Yeah. And especially in the beginning, where you're getting beat up by those clients every day and, you're not as confident. And so you're not putting off the right vibes just because you're new. Yeah. And so I was getting beat up, pretty hard in the beginning, and just to have, the community kind of reach out and embrace me and, just, kind of give me feedback. And I was very vocal in the beginning in the band app, putting stuff out there, and, people were replying back and always positive. And, Chase, your words are always very positive as well during the morning call, which is super helpful. And, really just kind of helped me stay on my feet, in the beginning. And so that was huge. The community is very positive. I was kind of reflecting the other day and saying, well, these community chats could go in a lot of different directions. It could be just like a group venting session. It could be a group whatever, but it's not. Like, everybody gets on there and they celebrate their wins and, help each other out. Because, 80% of the people I talk to, I don't get into their house, but we don't talk about that. I mean, yeah, in general, like you might talk about it with your builder on how to improve, but we focus on the wins, which is why we do this. And, I have a little playlist that I play on Spotify. It's called my victory playlist. And so anytime I have like an awesome, like breakout day where I do PR, like break a PR or something that's really good, like that day where I got 4,200 in sales in one day, I break out the victory playlist, and it's got a mixture of, all sorts of different songs on there. It's kind of getting me pumped up and just let me reflect, and, we live for that 20%, right? That 20% illuminates, overshadows, blows out of the water that 80%. And so, yeah, it's a roller coaster with this job, but, it's not boring, it's fun. You get out there and you just, you have these highs and lows that are just, I love it. I love going out there and, when everything starts clicking and helping people out, I just love it, and it just completely, Roger Chan a while back, somebody was saying, what do I do with these leads that are, just aren't answering their calls or not answering doors? Like, dude, buy more leads. If you get a certain amount of leads, you care, or, Holden says it, he says like, you care less, it's like, it's not that I don't care. It's just, I care less about these bad things that are happening, because holy smokes, I've got all these people to visit, all these leads, and just boom, it's out of your brain, so So yeah, it's just all the positivity has been great in the community.
It's a lot of fun, and particularly going back, not to be redundant, in a business where your best friend is the empty passenger seat. It's also typically there's not many people to celebrate with. It's really neat to see everybody celebrate each other. Like, John, awesome job. You get people you don't even know. You just get started, and then you get to know. So this person's in Chicago, you're in Houston. This person's in LA, and this person's in Florida. It's really neat for me, selfishly, to see people celebrate each other. And they don't even know them, and initially, and then there seems to be a bond that forges, and you start to root for this person because you saw like Taylor. Everybody and their mom is rooting for Taylor Bright on a daily basis. After even before he did the 34,000 on a blitz in 1 week, everybody was rooting for him beforehand because they knew he was a new guy. He was new to the business. Same thing for you. I find that to be extremely powerful, and I want to kind of transition to one thing that I know that is extremely big for me on these podcasts. There's people who find these podcasts that have never been in the industry before, and they're looking to get into the industry. For you right now, you have that perspective. You're a six-figure earner now. The best is yet to come, which is scary for you. You are getting better on a daily basis. For somebody who's new right now that finds this podcast, that listens in, they were turned on to it by somebody else, or they're looking in there. I don't know if Ephesus is the place. In terms of this business, what are some words of wisdom that you would throw out there to them?
Well, you got to have a few things in place, right? For any business, right? We can put hard work into anything, into any field, any company, any business, but where can I put that hard work in that's for me? And so I've worked, for a number of agencies, and, put in some pretty long hours with them. And, sometimes family stuff comes up and they don't like it. So with this business, you do have to put in the hours, don't get me wrong, especially in the beginning, but over time, it's your hours, right? Whatever works for you. I took my daughter to school this morning at 8 a.m. Well, could I have done that if I was working for somebody else? No. So being able to adapt the business to your needs and your family's needs is awesome. Also, the simplicity, it's still a business, don't get me wrong, but the simplicity of this business compared to others is mind-blowing, along with the income potential, right? And so I put in pretty hard work at other businesses as well, with my previous agency and all that, but the path to success was not nearly as clearly defined as it is with this business. With this business, it's you buy leads, you visit people, you make sales, ta-da, So with my marketing business, it was, I'm going to go into the details of all of that, immensely more complicated. The field is shifting all the time. Competitors are coming up, new technologies are coming out. With this, it's relatively stable. You get a piece of paper that they send back to you in the mail, you go out and you visit them. And once you get the fundamentals down, you can add in all the complexity around that. But mastering the mundane, mastering the fundamentals is relatively easy within, I'd say, like a 6 month timeline, regardless of your level of skill, as long as you're willing to put in the effort.
You just hit on something that I think it's not the holy grail of our industry, but it is such a powerful statement. Give it all you can, literally sell out, become obsessed with your business for your first 6 months. And at that point, if you're a sponge and you're obsessed with it, you will soak up so much knowledge. And then also, if you're putting it into action, like you've done and so many others at a high level, you're going to get beat up enough. You're going to learn through experience as well as through osmosis and mentorship. That is a combination for winning. As long as you keep your activity up and you're out there working and you're learning, those three things are going to just continue to cycle around you and then raise you up to a level that will help you become extremely successful. And then, like you said, at that point, when you have the basic fundamentals, then it's just a matter of gauging and ramping things up or down based off of your goal. If you have the basic fundamentals, you can then raise your lead volume to then match the goal that you have. But you got to have those basic fundamentals. Can't be reckless with it. That's where a good mentor comes into play to kind of regulate you a little bit in terms of, whoa, I've seen this before. Don't come out and buy 90 leads to start with. You're not ready for that. But you've been an unbelievable student who is now turning into somebody who you're there. I mean, you are a producer. You are a six-figure producer. And like I said before, in a nice way, it's scary to see you improve at the rate you're improving. I attribute that 100% to your work ethic and the fact that you're plugged in. It's not that we've invented anything crazy in terms of sales, training. The basics are the basics in this business. But the fact that you've adopted them and put them into play and just made that activity happen is a testament to your ability, man. And I appreciate the kind words in regards to the community. We work our butt off to try and make sure that that value prop is there. But to see it work for somebody like yourself, that's what it's all about for us.
Yeah, good point. And I think it also, like, for longevity in the business, you kind of got to think about what are your whys, right? And so for me, my why in this business is, I want to provide a good income for my family. I want to be able to provide for them, and it's stable, it's reliable. It's not something where if there's a downturn in the economy or this and that, like, these paychecks that these seniors are getting are stable, right? The most stable probably out of many industries. The other reason is kind of my why is, I've seen as a pattern, in my career that I just like to help people. And so what keeps me going out and helping these seniors is we have a great product. We have great products for them that are better than what they already have and better than they could get on their own. And so I love being able to help them, and I'm always helping them in one way or another, whether or not we make a sale or not. I might have a little handout I can give them, point them in the right direction. I've talked to seniors lately who have, I don't vary too far from the path, but if it takes a couple of minutes where they're like, I didn't get my second dose for my COVID vaccine, I'm like, dude, go here. I helped a senior, spent an extra 5 minutes in my life. I helped a senior before the big freeze that we had in Texas. I went out on a couple faucets and just wrapped some towels around some faucets, put a bag around it. Didn't make a sale, but it took me 5 minutes. Wouldn't you want somebody doing that for your grandma? Hell, no cussing, but anyway, so heck yeah, you would. It took a couple minutes of my day, and that's what keeps me going, is helping these seniors. If I was, not helping them, I don't know that I could do it at this level every day.
I think that's part of what is making you successful, is that mentality. You just said it. We've said it for years, is every person you run into, some days you're not going to want to wear that smile. Some days you're not going to feel like smiling. Some days you're not going to feel like being jovial, but treating them like mom, dad, grandma, grandpa,
absolutely.
That's huge. That's huge. So, man, I appreciate the time today. We're going to do this again. We have got to do this again sooner than later.
Enjoyed it.
And I'm super excited that you joined us today, and I appreciate you, buddy.
All right. You guys have a good one.
Thanks, John.